Grant Morrison, the man, the myth, the legend. This man, in my opinion, has single-handedly evolved comics to such a grander scale, creating stories enriched with lore, excitement, and otherworldly phenomena, while also always posing questions to the reader and simultaneously creating stakes leading to an astounding payoff. But what I think I love most about Grant Morrison's work is not only his attention to detail, but also his continuity being one of the most important factors to a comic book. This especially goes to books that he's made, like X-Men, Doom Patrol, All-Star Superman, Arkham Asylum, and my personal favorite work he's ever done being his run on Batman. I think it's just the way Grant Morrison writes Batman, it just seems almost otherworldly, and that being because it kinda is. Batman as a character has spanned upwards of over 80 years now, and somehow Grant Morrison manages to incorporate stories spanning all the way from the 60s into his writing, while also building off of what came before in such a masterful way. Instead of ditching the history of Batman and trying to develop a newer, fresher take on Batman, Grant Morrison does the opposite, building off of the history that came before and never shying away from the material, no matter how wacky it can be. A perfect example of this can come from Batman R.I.P. actually. They uses stories spanning from 40 years apart, using characters that were once one-off characters completely from a short story from like battling concrete fucking animals and building them up to something much greater. And it's all in the way Grant Morrison uses these 80 years of Batman's continuity that makes the story feel so alive. And going further, I'd like to play a clip between Kevin Smith and Grant Morrison discussing how he views Batman's continuity and also how it shaped Grant Morrison's storytelling.
Best way to do Batman that's never been done is to accept every single era as one guy's biography. So I thought, the feral young Batman from 1938 who's out there with guns in his hand and is fighting vampires and crooks. I thought, well, imagine that's Batman at 20, And then he meets this kid when he's late 21. And the kid's this super, this little working class circus kid who's totally cocky. And this introverted young Norman Bates Batman is suddenly, wait a minute, this is the kid that died in me. And it's suddenly, this is everything I wanted to be. And the two become friends, and it's no creepy, it's just like, it's like my best friend, he's my brother, he's everything I wish I could be. And the kid's looking at him going, he's everything I wish I could be.
You're going to make me cry.
And suddenly, I'm looking at it, imagine that's his history. And then he's 23 and the kid's like 13 and they're up again, they're in the dense thick of it now, and it's the best era of Batman. They're solving the crimes, and even the Joker's stopped murdering people. He's just having fun.
There's that beautiful part of that one issue where he's just like, the Joker and Robin had a laughing contest, and the Joker...
and Robin out-laughs him. And you can just see that drawn by Dick Sprang, but it never was.
Right.
And then, he's 24 and you're getting into the 60s now, and it's starting to get a bit synthetic because Batman's feeling the kid's a little bit older. Batman's getting a bit sick of this, and he's remembering when he was a young urban commando, and that's what it was all about. And now it's all these Quizmaster bullshit TV.
Costumed villains, pop villains.
And then it's suddenly Adam West and Burt Ward for a few months where it's just really synthetic and fucked up, and they've been on so many mind-altering chemicals from the Scarecrow and the Joker. They don't know what the fuck's happening when they punch people. They're seeing graphics in the air. And I thought, imagine it's just all real. Then he's 25 and Robin's grown up and he's going to college, and suddenly Batman's a bachelor, and that ties into the Denny O'Neil, Neil Adams stuff in the 70s where they moved to the penthouse and suddenly he's fucking Talia and he's got hairs in his chest. And I'm thinking, Batman's grown up, get rid of the kid, now I'm doing it, And I just saw and it fitted beautifully into the personality of this insane billionaire, unique human. And that's what I mean. I got so into him as a man. Imagine you'd gone through this. You fucked the devil's daughter. And then suddenly you get a new Robin because you're thinking, I'm getting a bit weird, and let's get a boy in and let's try and you get Jason Todd and it all goes wrong and your heart's broken and then everything goes wrong and then it's no man's land and the earthquake and everybody's dying. And I took it to that. And I thought, I want to start with that guy, and it's how he comes out of it. He does the Thulgal Buddhist ritual, and he comes out of it the pure Batman. That's where I started, as Batman at the peak, the optimum Batman, who just, all of this is me, the camp, everything. Once I was funny, once I was sexy, once I was weird, now I'm this, I'm all of them. And that was what we started with. And I think it was that was my new take on it that I wanted to, that no one I thought had done.
Now, after watching the clip, you can get an idea on how he writes Batman and how he made one of the greatest Batman stories ever told, being Batman R.I.P. Now, for context to the story, we need to go all the way back to the 60s during the campy Batman stories before Batman became an edgelord. And it all takes place in Batman issue 156, Robin Dies at Dawn. In the beginning of the story, Batman and Robin are in some unknown realm trying to outrun a huge rock monster. They try to do everything they can to outrun this monster, but it doesn't seem to be enough. And this ultimately ends with the death of Robin. And Batman's so unable to forgive himself for Robin's death, he tries to kill himself too. But in doing this, he ends up waking up to the real world where he's undergoing some kind of experiment. It turns out Batman had signed up for a military program and underwent tests for a kind of space medicine. Totally not suspicious, but the lab members thank Batman for his contribution and they both soon leave. However, after this, while fighting crime, Batman sees visions of the very same rock monster that killed Robin, throwing him off of his entire idea of the whole crusade, and even almost quits being Batman for a short time. Now, at this time, all this story was meant to be was simply a one-off, but Grant Morrison being Grant Morrison, he went back and built more from this silly story, creating the Dr. Hurt character, a villain that would make his sole purpose being to destroy Batman and everything that he stands for. Studying Batman for years on end and forming a villainous group called the Black Glove to secretly conspire against Batman. During this time in Batman R.I.P., Bruce has also grown fond of a woman named Jezebel, who very quickly found out that Bruce Wayne was indeed Batman. Also during this time, Jezebel had been invited to the Black Glove, with Bruce desperately trying to investigate this group for some time. So much so that he would bring her down to the Batcave to try and figure out what the Black Glove was planning, but in Jezebel seeing the Batcave, she would question his Cape Crusade. It's also here where we see several more things from Batman's history long forgotten, like Jason's Ishmael suit that is no longer canon, and the Bat costume Bruce's father wore so long ago to act as foreshadowing to Bruce Wayne donning the Bat cowl himself. However, while Jezebel walks further in the Batcave discussing the Black Glove, she turns to Bruce and asks, "What if you're not well? And what if it's you? What if you're the Black Glove?" Bruce then ponders the question but quickly denies it. He then points to the Batcomputer explaining to Jezebel that he's been seeing this graffiti all over Gotham throughout Grant Morrison's run, but he doesn't know what it means, just that it has something to do with the Black Glove. Jezebel then looks at the graffiti and says it out loud, Zur and R, thus triggering a code phrase within Bruce's head, triggering his mind to see the very same concrete monsters from before. Bruce then passes out and the Black Glove has made their move. Later in the story we end up finding out that during the events of Robin Dies at Dawn, Dr. Hurt had implanted a code phrase within Bruce's mind while incapacitated to completely wipe his memory. Dr. Hurt was just waiting for the right moment. After the Black Glove ambushes Bruce, they beat the shit out of Alfred and throw Bruce Wayne into some gutter in Gotham, drugged, sick, and left with nothing that could identify him as Bruce Wayne. Meanwhile, Dr. Hurt has freed the Joker to work for him, and Dr. Hurt has started to don the cowl Bruce's father wore that I mentioned earlier, thinking he himself is now Thomas Wayne. However, what the Black Glove did not anticipate was Batman's many techniques, most specifically in ones involving his mind. See, in the event that Bruce Wayne were to ever lose his memory or his mind, he would actually end up using what I would like to call a backup save file in his brain that holds the base elements of Batman, becoming Zur and R. However, the only downside to becoming this type of Batman is there is no longer the same morals as Bruce Wayne, making him that much more deadly, irritable, and vigilant than the original Batman. Kinda like Bruce's Tyler Durden. Zur and R is also another callback to an older continuity Grant Morrison makes with him first appearing from Batman issue 113, seeing Bruce Wayne transported to the planet Earth X and meeting the Batman of Zur and R, possessing pretty much the same likeness as Bruce, but some minor differences. Like some of his gadgets, most notably his Bat Radio, which can issue electric molecules that can control disturbances within the atmosphere. Now, after this adventure, it's never really clear whether or not it was just a dream, but in Batman's words himself, saying, "It would be far easier to consider this a dream, but how can I? For in my hand I hold the Bat Radio." Grant Morrison also ties up this connection in such a masterful way by making Zur and R essentially the last thing Thomas Wayne ever said to Bruce, saying the sad thing is they'd probably lock someone like Zorro up in Arkham. Zorro in Arkham, Zur and R. The connection he makes from the 60s continuity to now is just brilliant. And throughout Zur and R's journey to find the Black Glove, he also comes across Batmite, set to act as his moral compass. Yet another character from the campy Batman stories Grant Morrison includes, as Batmite would usually spawn into a story with Batman and try to mess with him, just like his counterpart Mr. Mxyzptlk who torments Superman. The two go hand in hand. And throughout the two's pairing, Batmite slowly starts to bring Bruce's mind back together, even explaining the entire personality of Zur-En-Arrh, giving it an explanation that would make sense in this continuity. Telling Zur-En-Arrh that Batman thinks of everything, creating this backup self that he is now. But during their adventure following, Zur-En-Arrh asks how he can even trust Batmite, and asks if he's really even from the fifth dimension like he says, or if he's just a part of his imagination. To which Batmite says, imagination is the fifth dimension. Some world's greatest detective you are. After this, Zur-En-Arrh goes further down the rabbit hole, somewhat putting his mind back together, while also fighting the likes of Joker and the Black Glove. Bruce tries to stop them and save Jezebel, but upon Bruce getting to Jezebel, she puts on a black glove, signifying that she was a double agent the entire time. After this betrayal, Bruce is buried alive, and the Black Gloves celebrate while Dr. Hurt tries his best to hold back his excitement because he can't wait to run experiments on Batman. However, Bruce would break out of the coffin, rising up as Batman again, taking down the members of the Black Glove till only Dr. Hurt would remain. Now, I don't want to spoil the ending, but Dr. Hurt tries to convince Batman that he is Thomas Wayne and that Bruce was supposed to die along with his wife so long ago, and even tries to blackmail Bruce that he will destroy the symbol of Batman and destroy everything he's worked so hard to keep secret. But upon hearing this, Bruce doesn't listen, and let's just say the Black Glove figured out that Batman always wins. Now, after this, it was supposed to conclude Bruce's story and be the death of Batman, but the story was so good that a story called Last Rites would be the follow-up, going through every key moment in Batman's history, taking in Dick Grayson, showing the campy fun years of the dynamic duo, even showing the Bat Radio, making it sort of possible that Zur-En-Arrh actually existed, then Batman falling in love, then showing the amalgam of villains that come out of the woodwork, and hey, it's the Eraser. Dick goes off to become Nightwing, then Batman goes off on his own for a while, then the death of Jason Todd, Nightfall, No Man's Land, Hush, and finally every single bad thing that ever happened to Batman, ending the story with Bruce Wayne finally emerging as Batman born again. Following this, however, Batman would sort of die during the events of Final Crisis. And I say sort of because he actually ends up traveling through different points in time, but that's a story for a different day. But to end off the video, I will say this story is such a perfect encapsulation of everything that came before, and Grant Morrison pays a perfect tribute to not only the character of Batman, but the history of said character, as well by wrapping a sweet bow around the entire history of Batman. And for that, he's become my #1 comic book writer, and any book I see with his name on it, it's an immediate buy. Now, his run doesn't end here as it continues through Batman Incorporated, but that's a video for another day as well. But with that, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Leave a like, and don't forget to subscribe, and I'll catch y'all on the flip side.